I believe Nintendo is set to have their biggest year ever with the Nintendo Switch 2, and it's not just biggest year when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 itself, because obviously hasn't even been out a full year yet, but one of the biggest, if not the biggest year for game releases when it comes to Nintendo in history, because if you start looking down the lineup and seeing what they've already announced for 2026, and of course some things that have been leaked and some stuff that should happen in the future overall, which we're going to break down here, in addition to a number of other third-party offerings where developers are starting to already chip in because they see what is happening with the Nintendo Switch 2 sales exploding across different regions, and of course getting off to the fastest start ever in the history of gaming. More and more developers are going to be opting in to announcing projects and having their games released in 2026 on the Nintendo Switch 2. So we're going to break all of that down. Shout outs to my man Stealth over on Twitter. He talked about Nintendo's lineup, which I will have a more or full bigger video discussing this so far, but we are in good shape because before we've even gotten to the traditional Nintendo Direct that usually goes down in February or March, but usually it's February. About 9 out of the last 14 or 15 Nintendo Directs have been in February, the early direct. For those who don't know, Nintendo usually holds 3 directs per a year. When it comes to big directs, they'll have an early direct or spring direct, they'll have a summer direct or mid-year direct, and then they'll have a fall direct as well. And they've usually stuck to that path pretty faithfully for the most part overall, except for like the COVID year 2020, that was a little bit off, but outside of that, they've stuck to that for the last decade plus or something like that. So this is pretty much going to fall in line with what's happening. So let's talk about this just a bit, because Nintendo's 2026 publishing lineup so far, they've already announced, or they already pretty much are going to have 10 games overall. So January 15th, Animal Crossing New Horizons Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. February 12th, Mario Tennis Fever. March 5th, Pokemon Pocopia. Spring 2026, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. Spring as well, Super Mario Bros. Wonder Switch 2 Edition. Spring, Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream, Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave in 2026, Rhythm Heaven Groove in 2026, The Dust Bloods in 2026, Splatoon Raiders probably in 2026, as well as that was announced last year on the Nintendo Today app, and that doesn't even count Pokemon, the new gen Pokemon. We know that's probably coming this year as well because of the leaks. So that is 11 games before we've even gotten to the big Nintendo Direct. And I think that's the big key thing here. This is the most amount of games that I can recall Nintendo already having to be announced or already set for a year before we even got to the year. Now we're in 2026, but all of these games were announced and slated even before we got to 2026. That is an incredible sign going forward for this upcoming Nintendo Direct that we're probably going to have in February or March. But before we get into more of this, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos as soon as they drop. Okay, let's go ahead and get right back into this. Yeah, that's a lineup, and yes, it's not like it's the biggest, hugest games of Mario and Zelda and Smash Brothers and all of that, but once again, that's what Nintendo Directs are for, and I truly believe that this upcoming February or March, we're going to get a huge Nintendo Direct that's going to detail more of those big IPs that are coming. But even if you look at the very tail end here, or more like the just 2026 games with Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, the Duskblood, Splatoon Raiders as well, which is TBD on that one, but once again, still think that it's coming in 2026. Those games are going to be pretty popular when it comes to certain audiences out there. Then of course you have some more of the casual stuff when it comes to Mario Tennis Fever and Pokemon Pocopia as well, supplementing that with some stuff that could end up being pretty cool and boosting an already popular game even to more heights and getting it running and looking better on the Nintendo Switch 2 platform with Animal Crossing New Horizons and Super Mario Bros. Wonder Switch 2 Edition. I'm also really interested in seeing exactly what's happening with Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. I think that has the potential to be a great Yoshi 2D platformer. I'm just not that big of a fan of the yarn crafted woolly type stuff, so for me this is kind of a throwback throwback to how it was on the Super Nintendo with Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's going on there. Obviously, there's no Baby Mario, but I think it just kind of looks like an evolved kind of art from what they did then. So I'm very much looking forward to a lot of these games. And like I said, the Nintendo Direct that's coming up, that should be huge when it comes to new announcements, Nintendo first-party games, third-party games. This is the most momentum that I've ever seen Nintendo have in the history of Nintendo's platform, because the difference is that usually Nintendo's coming off of something that's not so good. So therefore, they're kind of unsure. They don't have as many systems. They're kind of wondering what's going to be happening. We're going to have to maybe split between a portable and a home console. And it's been like that throughout Nintendo's history for the most part. There's been very few times where Nintendo has full confidence, full amount of games, all on one platform. I mean, that's really only happened in the Switch 1 era, and it didn't even happen at the beginning because they were coming off of the Wii U. They're coming off, obviously, the Nintendo 3DS was winding down, and essentially Nintendo rolled that into one platform, but they were still supporting, when the Switch 1 launched, they were still supporting 3DS, and they had Switch 1, and people were upset at Nintendo Directs early because they'd still talk about Nintendo 3DS stuff. And of course, Nintendo wasn't sure exactly how well the Switch 1 was even going to do coming off of the Wii U and the slow 3DS launch start. So there was some issues there overall, not even having their NSO ready to go. They had to delay that a year plus from the Switch 1 launch. So with the Nintendo Switch 2, they have pretty much everything set. It's not perfect, obviously. You have game key cards, you have some other issues with pricing that people don't like, and I completely get that. Fair and valid, but the momentum that they have overall when it comes to the confidence that they had to sell this system, along with the amount of games that they've already announced and what they dropped last year. They dropped 6-7+ games last year as well. That's not even counting the Nintendo Switch 2 editions of games. If you count those, then obviously it was above that, but just actual new game releases. So it's looking like they're following up with that, and they're going to have quite a bit to announce as well. Now, another reason why I think this could be the biggest year when it comes to Nintendo titles is that it looks like things are rolling across the board. Now, we do have a lot of grifting and a lot of people making it seem or trying to put out clickbait, oh, the Switch 2 isn't selling good enough in this region or that region or stuff like that. But the reality is the Nintendo Switch 2 is selling considerably better than most of the systems on the market right now at this point. If you're looking at everything that you can buy between portable PCs, between Switch 1, between Xbox, between PlayStation, PlayStation 5 is selling great and it's doing good. They had to have that $100 off to help out with those sales, and that's great. It's doing great. But when it comes down to it overall, the Nintendo Switch 2 is also selling excellent from what we've seen in Japan. And now we have some new numbers that have came out from Spain as well, with the Nintendo Switch 2 selling over 312,000 units in 2025 in Spain. That does make it the fastest selling console ever. Mario Kart World is over 255,000 units with the 82% attach rate, and Donkey Kong Bonanza has sold over 61,000 units just in that European country alone. The Nintendo Switch 2 was also the fastest system to hit 300,000 units in Spain. It only took 30 weeks. Every other system in terms of best-selling systems have taken at least 40 weeks or more to get to that 300,000 unit landmark. So that's actually pretty impressive. And of course, Nintendo had the stock. They actually had the manufacturing stock to get that done. Another thing here too is that in the UK, the Nintendo Switch 2 has sold over 700,000 units in about 6 months or so. And the Nintendo Switch 1 sold 700,000 units in 10 months. So 7 months to 10 months when it comes to that. So the Nintendo Switch 2 has outsold the Switch 1 by a good chunk according to all of the data that we have there. Plus, we also know now that the Nintendo Switch 2 has also completely outsold the Wii U, Sega Dreamcast, and PlayStation Vita completely in the UK, which is just interesting. Obviously, those systems were not successful overall, but already outselling all of them, and we're just getting started. There's no brand new big 3D Mario, Super Smash Brothers, Pokemon when it comes to new generation Pokemon on the system yet. So to me, that shows that there's a ton of room for improvement overall. But another reason why I think this could be the biggest year is that we're starting to see some third-party developers also chime in as well. We know about what Square Enix has already put out on the Nintendo Switch 2 and what they plan to put out with stuff like Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate. That's coming out on January 22nd, 2026. In addition to that, we know that they plan to put the whole Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy on the platform. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, in addition to Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3, plus other games. They have plans to put all their AAA games, all their biggest titles, and in my opinion, that would include probably the next Nier game, or potentially even the next Kingdom Hearts game, Kingdom Hearts 4. I think that it would be insane at this point, considering the Japanese sales of the Nintendo Switch 2, to not have Kingdom Hearts on the Nintendo Switch 2. So you can expect that. In the past, Nintendo has just been devoid. When it comes to home console releases, there's just been nothing with Kingdom Hearts. I don't count those cloud games. Like, the last time you can go back and look at it was like the Nintendo 3DS and the DS. So the fact that that's probably going to be happening with Square Enix is a huge shift, I would say, to the dynamics of how the industry used to kind of be and how Nintendo's home consoles or their platforms would be treated overall. But also, let's take a look at what Yoshi P had to say when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV, because apparently he mentioned at a New Year's message, he said, please look forward to Final Fantasy XIV on the Switch. So he's been saying this for quite some time, and I'm guessing they've been trying to work out the details and technical tests of how they're going to get that done. But I honestly feel that there is a relation to this overall, and I think it's that test that Nintendo did. Nintendo did that technical test, or whatever that was, that thing online where people can play when there's a bunch of people building something and they all kind of build. I truly believe that was a test for a game like Final Fantasy XIV to be able to run properly with tens of thousands or thousands of people interacting all on screen at the same time. That just screams to me testing for an MMO or something like that. Now, Nintendo might have their own MMO that they're going to be doing that's also helping to test for, but I do believe that part of that was because they were trying to make sure that Final Fantasy XIV can run on Nintendo's servers, because Nintendo's online network or infrastructure has not been known to be able to handle MMOs like Final Fantasy XIV. So I think that finally, with the Switch 2, with Nintendo advancing their tech, the new MPLN servers, and everything that they've done so far, I think it's finally time that a game like Final Fantasy XIV comes over. And once again, it just shows that some of these third-party developers, especially in Japan, pretty much all of them, are taking the Nintendo Switch 2 incredibly serious, and that is good for us, the end consumer, as we're going to get significantly more games announced for the platform at this point compared to what we got with the Nintendo Switch 1, where it was literally a barren wasteland of Japanese third-party support at the beginning. Now, they came on pretty quickly after they saw the sales overall, but there was still a lot of gaps when it comes to what third-party developers were doing in Japan and the Nintendo Switch 1. So very excited about this. Now, we talked about this before, but I also wanted to kind of just go over it again, because the data miners, when it comes to Monster Hunter Wilds Switch 2 version, they have uncovered local multiplayer interface for the Nintendo Switch 2 via the PC. So it's very interesting to see here. It's flat out right there, and it says Nintendo Switch 2 right there. You guys are seeing it. So I talked about this story before, and it does seem like Capcom is preparing a Nintendo Switch 2 version of Monster Hunter Wilds. And how would they get that to go? Because some people think, well, how can it run on the Nintendo Switch 2? Well, just like how lots of stuff has been able to be ported over to the Nintendo Switch 2. Obviously, you have a cap when it comes to 30 FPS. You lower the resolution and things like that. And then you use the unique features of the Nintendo Switch 2 when it comes to DLSS and other things to help the image overall, lower rendering or target render overall, and then the look or the output looks higher to where you can get that running and looking good. Now, I am of the opinion that they should probably do a Switch 2 specific Monster Hunter game as well. I think that having both would be great. I'm not sure if a Switch 2 specific Monster Hunter is ready anytime soon. Maybe that comes out in the next few years. If you look at the Nintendo Switch 1, that was a 2021 release for Monster Hunter Rise. So about 4 years after the Nintendo Switch 1 came out. So I'm guessing maybe about 3 years or so after the Switch 2 comes out, maybe there is a Switch 2 specific Monster Hunter game made, which by then the Nintendo Switch 2 install base will be significantly higher than what it is right now. And at this point, point, so Capcom would obviously be more incentivized and can sell more copies, and they can take more time to create that game. So overall, I'm just looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing what a lot of these third-party developers do when it comes down to that. But yeah, if you look at it here, Chinese data miners, they've uncovered the actual local multiplayer interface for Monster Hunter Wilds on the Nintendo Switch 2 hidden within the PC version. So it's very likely that they do announce this, and I would probably guess if they did, it's going to be announced at the next Nintendo Direct presentation, which once again should be going on around February or March or so. So I'm guessing that's going to happen as well. So if you're looking at it across the board between Capcom and all of their support, Square Enix and what they're doing, all the AA support that we've already gotten from like Falcom and also Level 5, they're going to be chipping in with a lot of different games and just Japanese developers in general. I think that this is going to be a massive year for the Nintendo Switch 2. So we'll see what happens as we go through the year. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos as soon as they drop. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.